Welcome, brother. I'm JK Amazy, head coach and founder of the Porn Reboot System. You can learn more about us by visiting elevatedrecovery.org. And if you're a man who is serious about ending his behavior and would like to learn more about controlling your out-of-control sexual behavior, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I release 4 videos a week. Now on to the topic of today, which is how to win the reboot game. Now, I often tell men that in our system, one of the most important concepts is not treating slips as a big deal. And what I mean by this is a lot of men, whenever they slip or whenever they relapse, they get really upset. You might be one of those men, you beat yourself up, you experience a lot of shame, and you feel like you failed and you need to start from day one. Well, in the Porn Reboot System, we don't count. And despite not counting, the men in our program are able to stay off pornography for well over 90 days, and we have clients who've been off pornography for years, up to 5 and 8 years. See, whenever you focus on slips and relapses, that becomes a weakness, and your addict is going to use it against you. I'll share a quick story with you. Let's say, for instance, you have a very long day at work, and you've been trying to stay off pornography, and let's say you've been doing the stop vapping thing, and you haven't viewed pornography and you have not masturbated for about a month. You come back after a really long day and you feel fatigued, you feel bored, you feel a little bit restless. So you're sitting down just watching TV, kind of vegging out after a long day, just chilling because you've been so busy. And next thing you know is that you start feeling restless and you feel an urge to do something. And you already know that that urge is to view pornography or to break a boundary. And as you sit there, you suddenly remember that, oh my God, there's this device that I could use. Like my wife may have left her iPad, and I know she doesn't take it to work, so I'm going to watch porn on that. And so you try to fight it with willpower. You try to mentally tell yourself you shouldn't do it. You're doing so well. You've been 30 days off porn and masturbation. It's so great. But at the same time, there are all these different rationalizations. There's this other voice telling you that, hey, it's okay, you've done well for a month, you've had a really tough day, you deserve it. One time won't hurt, just one peek, just watch one video and you're good to go, whatever it tells you. But the point remains that it wins. And you get to that point where you say, fuck it. Most of you know what the fuck it point is. You're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. And so you go and relapse. Now let's revisit what happened. There are 2 things that happened. And the first thing is, if you've been in that situation, and chances are you've been in a similar situation, you were feeling tired, you were feeling bored, and you were feeling restless after a long day. But the moment you made the decision to view pornography, or you even thought about it, you experienced a surge in energy. That is very important. You suddenly became energized because a biochemical reaction began. The second thing to notice is when you resisted that urge, that surge of energy, you felt bad. So you felt a surge of energy, it feels good. Like the thoughts are like, oh my God, I'm going to do something bad, but the surge of energy feels good. And when you resisted it, you started feeling bad. So guess what? You now have a bad feeling versus a good feeling. And when you have a bad feeling versus a good feeling, you're always going to go with the good feeling. And this is one of the things I mean when I talk about working with your brain versus against your brain. The way your brain works is that it is going to bring up that good feeling. And when you try to stop it, you feel bad. And that's one of the reasons that you end up masturbating and slipping and viewing pornography. So let's break down what was happening biologically. So you came back after a long day and you were actually fatigued. You were fatigued, you were bored, and you were restless. But let's make one thing clear. Your neocortex, which is the newer part of your brain, which is involved in memory, prioritization, language, and the more important, more complex functions of your brain, was actually what was fatigued, because that's what you had probably been using throughout the day. However, the midbrain, which is at the base of your skull, which is involved in survival, sex, fight or flight, food, the most base survival instincts is at the midbrain. That part was not fatigued because that part is always awake. It never goes to sleep. It never rests. It was bored. It needed some sort of stimuli. And so it's always important to realize that whenever your neocortex is fatigued, is tired, or is not functioning well, your midbrain, which is in charge of survival, that means eating carbohydrates and sugar, having sex, fighting, fear, and so on, will quickly take over. And this is exactly what happened. It is the part that was bored once your neocortex was fatigued, and it took over. The interesting thing is that when it takes over, the midbrain actually has access to the language centers in your neocortex. And that's how you start having that conversation with yourself. When you tell yourself, man, I shouldn't, I'm gonna regret it, no you're not, only once. That is your weak neocortex having a conversation with your midbrain, which now has an opportunity to do its thing. Anytime you use willpower or you try to white knuckle through it and push your way through this, what is simply happening is an unresolved conflict between your neocortex and your midbrain. Here's the important thing to learn from this, and here's how you win the reboot game. If we were to describe this as a game, a football game, if you're in Europe, other parts of the world, it's kicking the ball, and if you're in the US, North America, it's carrying the ball and running with it and kicking it once or twice. Let's describe it in the terms of a game. If you're doing the stop vapping method, if you're doing 12 steps, if you're doing most forms of therapy out there, what you're doing is you're playing a defensive game. A defensive game means that you're working against your brain. It means that you are busy focusing on setting boundaries, and you have made the decision to play a defensive game for the rest of your life. It means you come in and you say, hey, I don't have any power. This other team is stronger than me. My midbrain, which is part of your brain, is stronger than me. They're always going to win. So the best thing I can do is play defense so I never completely lose, but I'm going to lose every single game. It just becomes a game of how good am I at defending. However, the porn reboot system is about defense, but we really focus on offense. Why do we focus on offense? Because offense is actually working with your brain. When you work with your brain, you understand what is happening between your midbrain and your neocortex, and you're able to set up defenses, and you're able to prevent certain things from happening because you already know they're going to happen. When you know that at the end of the day you're going to be tired and you're going to have this conversation, you can already have things set up in your life to prevent it from happening. That's called playing offense. You actually have a strategy not to defend, but to move forward. And when you think of a game, really, winning a game is not about just having great defense. So the great thing about playing offense is that even though you have a great defense and the other team scores a goal or scores a touchdown once in a while, which means a slip or a relapse once in a while, it doesn't matter as long as you score more wins, more touchdowns, which means as long as you get to a point where you can come back from work and your life is set up so that you don't even feel those urges. So you rarely allow your midbrain to take over. Those are wins. That is playing offense. You're never allowing the other person to score, but you're also preemptively attacking them. So as long as you score more goals and touchdowns than the other team scores goals or touchdowns, your brain is going to rewire. And that's the way that this game works. That's how you actually get to rewire your brain. So brother, what I have to say to you is stop being so afraid of relapses and slips. Instead, start focusing on how you can win. Start focusing on the things that you can do, not just to prevent a relapse or a slip from happening, but to getting to a point where you never ever have to play the game again because you're the champion. You're right there at the top and nobody can challenge you. And one of the best ways to do that is to follow the right system. I really hope that analogy made sense. It's super late here and it's one of the last videos I'm shooting for the day. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you need a little bit more explanation of that analogy, please go ahead and ask your questions in the comment section below, and I will be happy to answer. Have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you later on in the week.